They often warn against trusting the wrong people in your home. But consider this. If you were Cheryl, would you dare to open your door to your ex-convict brother-in-law in the dead of night? On July 22, 1977, Connecticut would bear witness to what would become its largest mass murder. A crime so horrific that the state Supreme Court would later describe it as brutal and seemingly motiveless. The gruesome details of that fateful night would linger in the minds of many, a haunting reminder of a tragedy that defies explanation. As we delve deeper, we will peel back the layers of this nightmare to uncover the truth about what happened to the Baudois family. To understand the magnitude of this tragedy, we must first explore their lives and the world they inhabited. They say to be cautious about whom you let into your home. But consider this. If you were Cheryl, would you open your door in the dead of night to your ex-convict brother-in-law? In a tight-knit community on Cedar Hill Drive in Prospect, Connecticut, where neighbors were like family, the rural charm fostered a sense of peace and safety. While this may seem like a minor detail, it would later reveal itself as a crucial element in the unfolding tragedy. The Baudois household was anything but ordinary, with 10 individuals living under one roof. At the helm was Frederick Baudois, a father devoted to his family and his wife Cheryl. Cheryl, just 29 years old, was a mother of 7, balancing the needs of toddlers and preteens. The eldest, 12-year-old Frederick Jr., was closely followed by his 10-year-old sister, Sharon Lee. Among the vibrant lives in this household were their 9-year-old daughter, Deborah Ann, 8-year-old Paul, 6-year-old Roderick, 5-year-old Holly Lynn, and 4-year-old Mary Lou. Adding to the lively chaos was their 6-year-old niece, Jennifer Santoro. With so many young lives in the mix, their home was undoubtedly a lively and chaotic space, filled with the everyday ups and downs of a large family. It was a setting bursting with energy and noise, a stark contrast to the silence that would soon engulf it. On the night of Thursday, July 21, 1977, the Baudois family was enjoying one of those blissful summer evenings. The 8 children were swimming and playing in a neighbor's pool, laughter echoing through the warm air. In Prospect, Connecticut, the atmosphere was filled with carefree joy, a typical summer night where innocence reigned. Yet, life for the Baudois family was about to take a harrowing turn. Though they lived simply, the Baudois family was not struggling. They had enough to get by, grateful for their modest means, unaware that comfort could quickly turn into chaos. They had cultivated a warm and loving home that radiated happiness. On this particular night, Cheryl supervised the children as they splashed about, while Frederick Baudois worked his 3rd shift at the Pratt & Whitney factory, striving to provide for his family. Without warning, everything changed when an unexpected visitor arrived at the pool. This man was no stranger. The children rushed to greet him, their faces lighting up with joy as they enveloped him in hugs and kisses. It was evident that he was someone they knew and trusted. Soon, the children wrapped up their fun and left the pool with him while the neighbor returned indoors. The evening continued like any other, yet no one could foresee the dark and tragic turn that awaited, a twist of fate that would alter their lives forever. But soon, the air filled with a more alarming sound, screams emanating from the Baudois house. Panic set in as they realized something was terribly wrong, prompting them to call 911. Yet, an unsettling sound pierced the night, a chorus of screams emanating from the Baudois residence. In that moment, the neighbors understood that something horrific was unfolding. Their instincts kicked in, and they swiftly dialed 911 to report the raging fire. At 4:15 in the morning, the tranquility of the early hours was shattered. Neighbors began to smell smoke. Initially, they assumed it was someone burning leaves. Firefighters managed to extinguish the blaze, but what unfolded next was beyond comprehension. As the acrid smoke cleared and the flames flickered out, the first responders began their grim search of the house. Inside the home, the unspeakable truth emerged. The bodies of Cheryl Baudois, her 7 children, and her 6-year-old niece, Jennifer Santoro, were found throughout the house. Each had been brutally murdered before the fire was set. Cheryl Baudois's charred body lay lifeless on the kitchen floor. In a haunting tableau, 3 of her children were discovered in one bedroom, while 2 more were found in another. The master bedroom held 1 child, and 2 others were located in the bathroom, victims of a horrific fate. The scene that greeted them was nothing short of horrifying. Adding to the nightmare, many of the victims, including Cheryl, had their hands bound behind their backs. 2 of the children were also discovered with their feet tied. It became painfully clear that everyone had suffered severe head injuries before the fire consumed their bodies. This was a crime marked by unimaginable cruelty and sheer brutality. The horror of the scene shocked even the most seasoned investigators. Edward P. Leonard, the state police commissioner at the time, remarked, "All of the bodies were burned extensively. a statement that barely scratched the surface of the tragedy. Firefighters and police officers stood witness to the aftermath of this unspeakable tragedy. Some neighbors later admitted that they had awakened to the smell of smoke but had not initially realized the danger. It was only when they heard the chilling screams that the gravity of the situation struck them, prompting calls for help. One neighbor, Joseph Paulino, attempted to intervene. He rushed to the Boudoir home, desperate to enter, but the flames were already too fierce. He later recounted the terrifying moment. "I opened the back door and got driven back by a blast of heat. Then, in a heart-stopping moment, the picture window shattered. At that time, Frederick Boudoir was working the third shift at the Pratt & Whitney factory in North Haven. Around 5:30 in the morning, police arrived at his workplace to take him away. They withheld the grim details, only informing him that he needed to come with them, driving him instead to his mother's house. In the midst of the chaos, the family's Reverend Joseph Donnelly awaited to deliver the devastating news. Upon hearing the tragic details, Frederick Boudoir turned to the Reverend, his voice trembling, as he asked a question no parent or spouse should ever have to voice. "Are they all dead?" Frederick's somber inquiry confirmed the depths of his despair. His worst fears were realized. Everything he cherished, his wife, his children, his entire family, had been lost in a single horrific night. Overcome with grief, Frederick, through tear-streaked eyes, lamented, "There's only one thing to see, the bastard pay." But while he was engulfed in sorrow, investigators were tirelessly pursuing leads to uncover the truth. They established a command post at Prospect Town Hall, determined to stop every vehicle traveling along Route 68, leaving no stone unturned. Meanwhile, the investigation at the Boudoir residence continued. As Frederick grappled with this unimaginable loss, investigators began to notice something peculiar. All the doors and windows were locked tight. This raised an alarming question. How could the killer have escaped when everything was secured from the inside? It suggested a chilling possibility, that the perpetrator was either already inside the house or had somehow locked the doors behind them. Naturally, this fueled the urgency of the investigation. The investigators began interviewing neighbors. It was then that they learned about a man named Lorne Quinn, who had been spotted visiting while the children enjoyed their time at a neighbor's pool. But there was more. Neighbors reported seeing Lorne Quinn again early Friday morning, sitting alone in a black sedan parked in a nearby church lot about a mile from the Boudoir home. This information set off alarm bells for investigators. Who was this man, and why had he lingered near the house before and after the tragedy? The neighbors provided further details, painting a more complex picture of that fateful night. The connection between Lorne and the Boudoir family ran deeper than many realized. For nearly 2 years, he had lived in their basement, an unexpected presence in their lives. Then, without warning, he vanished, slipping away from the Boudoirs. But just as abruptly, he re-emerged on a fateful Thursday night, the same night the Boudoir children had gone swimming. At a neighbor's pool, the darkness of the night loomed over the children. Meanwhile, investigators cast a wide net, leaving no stone unturned in their search for answers. In the early hours of the investigation, even Frederick, the grieving father, was scrutinized closely. Officers understood that in such tragedies, those closest to the victims often became suspects. When officers sought permission to search Frederick's truck, he complied without hesitation, confident he had nothing to hide. The search yielded no evidence, no suspicious items, but it was a necessary step in ruling him out. As the investigation reached the 24-hour mark, a whirlwind of activity engulfed the scene. Police set up roadblocks, interviewed neighbors, and spoke to over 100 witnesses, each detail critical. This included questioning both Frederick and Lorne. Investigators knew that no piece of information was too small to be considered. However, when officers ran Lorne Quinn's name through their system, what they uncovered was deeply troubling. His past was far darker than the neighbors had indicated. He was no stranger to the law. Lorne Quinn's criminal record painted a disturbing portrait of a man with a dangerous and unpredictable streak. In April of 1974, he was sentenced to prison for larceny, a harbinger of the chaos that would soon unfold. Lorne had served less than a year before his release in February of 1975, but freedom proved fleeting. By March of 1976, he found himself back behind bars after a failed escape attempt, a reckless act that hinted at his unrestrained nature. After serving time for his escape, he was paroled in September of 1976. But just 7 months after his release, tragedy struck at the Boudoir home, raising alarming red flags for investigators. 7 months was hardly enough time for Lorne to rebuild his life, let alone prove he had changed. Yet he found himself connected to one of the most devastating crimes the community had ever witnessed. For investigators, the timing of Lorne's return and the circumstances surrounding it were impossible to ignore. His criminal record, coupled with his bizarre behavior leading up to the tragedy, created an unsettling picture. Why had he resurfaced at the Baudouin home after such a long absence? Why was he seen sitting in a black sedan in a nearby church parking lot the morning after the fire? As the investigation deepened, a shocking twist emerged. Lorne was not merely a random individual with a criminal background. He was, in fact, Frederick's foster brother. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. On the morning of July 22nd, around 9:00 a.m., investigators approached Lorne at his apartment, requesting his presence for questioning. To their surprise, he agreed without hesitation, accompanying them to the police station. What transpired next shocked everyone involved. Lorne didn't just answer their questions, he laid everything bare. He was ready to confess, providing a chillingly detailed account of the crime. His confession sent shivers down the spines of the investigators. He admitted to attacking his sister-in-law and the children, revealing a darkness that was both profound and disturbing. To ensure the integrity of his confession, the police questioned him 3 times. Each time his story remained consistent. Even when his psychiatrist was brought in, Lorne stood firm, unwavering in his admission. At this point, the truth was glaringly evident. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, revealing a narrative of tragedy, betrayal, and horrifying revelation. Lorne was indeed the architect of this terror. He was arrested and faced 9 counts of murder and 1 count of arson. Yet, investigators were not leaving anything to chance. They compelled him to draft a comprehensive confession. This 7-page confession meticulously detailed every chilling moment of the night's events. The specificity and accuracy of the facts were such that no outsider could have known them, certainly not from any news report. Everything came straight from Lorne's own words. However, this was just the beginning. Later that very day, on July 23rd, investigators unearthed even more incriminating evidence. A trash bag brimming with bloody garments. This bag was discovered near Lorne's driveway, and even more unsettling were the bloody shoes and socks found in the trunk of his car. The same vehicle that witnesses had seen parked by the church on the fateful night. Each piece of evidence meticulously aligned with Lorne's confession. The weight of the evidence grew heavier, forming an undeniable case against him. But if you thought the case was sealed and Lorne would remain imprisoned, think again. The narrative was about to take another unexpected twist. Despite the mounting evidence, his confession, the bloodied attire, the eyewitness accounts, Lorne's defense team was far from conceding defeat. They sought every possible avenue to undermine the prosecution's case, refusing to relent in their battle. Lorne's attorney, John R. Williams, was resolute in his mission to challenge the evidence presented against his client. Despite the overwhelming case against Lorne, Williams fought tooth and nail to undermine the prosecution's narrative. He was determined to create doubt, pushing for delays and challenging the validity of the evidence. The defense argued that obtaining a blood sample from Lorne without solid evidence was inappropriate. They sought to exclude both the confession and the blood evidence from the trial, attempting to introduce alternative theories, including the notion that Cheryl's brother could be a possible suspect. The defense argued fervently that obtaining a blood sample from Lorne Quinn, without substantial evidence to support such a request, was a violation of legal protocol. They sought to have both the confession and the blood evidence dismissed from the trial. In a desperate bid to shift the narrative, they introduced alternative theories, suggesting the unsettling possibility that Cheryl Baudouin's brother could be involved in the case. The defense hinted at the possibility of another suspect being the true perpetrator. However, the court remained steadfast, viewing the evidence for what it truly was: clear, consistent, and deeply chilling. They refused to let the defense divert attention away from Lorne's culpability. As the trial progressed, anticipation built. When the jury was sworn in on July 16, 1979, it felt as if the end was finally within reach. The day everyone had been waiting for was fast approaching. The public unveiling of Lorne's confession sent shockwaves through the courtroom. It was everything they had feared, a detailed and gruesome confession of his heinous acts, culminating in Lorne admitting to the murder of Cheryl. In a chilling confession, Lorne Quinn revealed his role in the heinous murders, detailing the brutal slaying of Cheryl Baudouin and her children with unsettling precision. He recounted how, just hours before the violence erupted, he had visited the house under the guise of picking raspberries with the kids, a moment tinged with innocence that would soon dissolve into horror. Lorne's narrative took a darker turn as he claimed that after leaving the Baudouin household around 8:30 p.m., he returned in the early hours of the morning. His story, difficult to fathom, suggested a calculated approach to his return. Around 2 or 3 a.m., he stealthily entered the home through the unlocked basement door. Once inside the kitchen, he casually flicked on the light, prompting Cheryl to come down and investigate the disturbance. According to Lorne, Cheryl did not exhibit any signs of alarm upon seeing him. When he asked to retrieve some tools from the basement to fix his car, she permitted him to go without hesitation, unaware of the deadly intentions that lurked behind his request. After retrieving the lug wrench, Lorne returned upstairs and casually requested a beer from Cheryl. Trusting and familial, she thought nothing of it. After all, he was family. But as she turned to fetch the drink, everything changed. In a sudden and brutal act, Lorne struck Cheryl over the head with the lug wrench. But he did not stop there. He continued to rain down blows upon her without a hint of remorse. In his chilling account, Lorne claimed that Cheryl remained eerily silent throughout the attack, not a single scream or cry for help escaping her lips. It is haunting to ponder what thoughts raced through her mind in those final moments. Was she trying to keep quiet, hoping to protect her children from the horror unfolding just steps away? Her silence, however, would prove futile. One of the children, drawn by the commotion, rushed into the kitchen, only to be met with the same wrench that had struck their mother. The carnage escalated as Lorne unleashed his fury on the remaining children, wielding both the wrench and a tire iron. Yet even amidst the chaos, he heard Cheryl moaning, a grim reminder that she still clung to life despite the horrific assault. He had previously confessed to tying up some of the children with string, tragically assaulting 10-year-old Sharon before taking her life. The horror endured by the innocent child was unimaginable. At just 10 years old, she was brutally beaten and then assaulted. In a chilling escalation, Lorne drenched Cheryl and all the children in gasoline, igniting the entire house in flames. However, when Lorne took the stand on September 5, 1979, his narrative shifted dramatically. He denied every confession he had previously made, asserting boldly that he was innocent. He claimed, "I didn't do any of that." Lorne insisted that he had only signed the confession under the influence of his psychiatrist, who suggested it would be beneficial for him. According to Lorne, the psychiatrist had said, "You'd be better off if you signed." He further alleged that during his interrogation, he had repeatedly asked for a lawyer, desperately expressing his need for legal counsel. Yet the police allegedly dismissed his requests, convinced of his guilt. They pressured him to confess, assuring him that it would be in his best interest to do so. When confronted with bloodstains on his clothing, Lorne concocted a peculiar explanation. He claimed the blood was not from the murders, but rather from a scuffle he had encountered on the night of the killings. According to Lorne, he had been out for coffee when he was attacked by some men outside the cafe. In a fit of retaliation, he claimed he fought back, resulting in the blood on his clothes. This bizarre account raised eyebrows, leaving many skeptical of his explanations. The situation grew even more peculiar as Lorne recounted his reaction upon learning of the murders. He stated that upon hearing the news from the police, he was so consumed by rage that he punched a wall in the police barracks. In his anger, he warned a state trooper that they better catch the killers before he did. During the trial, prosecutors unveiled a haunting photograph of the 7 murdered children, their innocent faces gazing out at the jury for the first time. The emotional weight of the image compelled Lorne's lawyer to call for a mistrial. The defense argued that the emotional impact could unduly sway the jury's opinion. However, the judge dismissed the motion, allowing the trial to proceed without interruption. As the case unfolded, certain pieces of evidence seemed to support Lorne's claims. For instance, his emotional reaction upon being informed of the murders aligned perfectly with details from his confession, raising questions about his actual culpability. Moreover, a state police fingerprint expert testified during the trial, asserting that the bloody handprint discovered in the bathtub did not belong to Lorne. The handprint found on the door jamb also failed to match his. This revelation cast further doubt on his involvement, particularly since the prints did not match any of the victims or even Frederick, the father. Compounding the mystery was a prior interview with Lorne, conducted in October of 1977. This interview, carried out by reporter Lincoln Milstein from the local newspaper The Current, had been kept hidden until the confession was released, exposing even more contradictions in Lorne's narrative. As the investigation unfolded, it became apparent that the fingerprints found at the scene did not match any of the victims, nor did they belong to Frederick Baudois, the father. This raised further questions, particularly regarding a prior interview with Lorne conducted in October of 1977. This interview, carried out by reporter Lincoln Milstein of the Current newspaper, had remained confidential until Lorne's confession emerged. The details revealed in that interview presented a web of contradictions that would only deepen the mystery surrounding these tragic events. In a haunting admission to Lincoln Milstein, Lorne confessed that the details of the killings eluded him. He could only recall fragmented memories, a conversation with Cheryl, the sight of bodies and blood strewn across the floor, and the flames engulfing the house. Claiming utter fear and confusion over the events, Lorne insisted that he could barely remember what had transpired. Yet, a pivotal moment arrived in October 1977 when he was moved to a state mental hospital for security reasons. Weeks later, he was officially committed. A psychiatrist testified that Lorne may have been suffering from schizophrenia or epilepsy, casting doubt on his mental state during the confession. This raised significant questions about the reliability of his statements. As discussions continued, the focus shifted to his accountability for the horrific crimes. Fast forward to October 1979, the jury wrestled with the evidence, deliberating for 3 days before ultimately declaring Lorne guilty on all counts of murder. Despite speculation that shame over allegedly molesting one or more of the Boudoir girls might have driven him to kill, the jury did not charge him with assault. Chief Assistant State's Attorney Walter Scanlon suggested this could have been a motive, although it remained unproven. The state sought the maximum sentence for Lorne, proposing a staggering 245 years, which included 25 years for each murder and an additional 20 years for arson. However, Judge Walter Pickett ultimately sentenced him to 105 years to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 50 or 55 years. The decision was rendered, but Lorne's attorney wasted no time in filing an appeal. So swiftly it seemed almost premeditated. Yet the court denied the appeal, sealing Lorne's fate. In the years that followed, Lorne persistently fought his conviction, submitting petitions for a habeas corpus trial. Despite his relentless efforts, each petition met rejection, leaving his legal battles stagnant. For those unfamiliar with the term habeas corpus, it serves as a legal mechanism allowing an accused individual to be brought before a court for review of their case. Lorne maintained his innocence, claiming that he had been wrongfully convicted and that his confession should never have been admissible in court. Eventually, he was transferred to McDougall Walker Correctional Facility in Suffield, Connecticut. There, Lorne would spend a staggering 38 years behind bars, during which he racked up 8 disciplinary offenses. These infractions included assault, drug possession, and various contraband violations. His final offense occurred in 1997 when he faced charges for assault and refusing to provide a specimen. Then, in June of 2015, Lorne's health took a critical turn. He was placed on a ventilator in the intensive care unit following a severe medical crisis, as reported by the Department of Correction. With no family willing or able to make medical decisions on his behalf, the judge was called to determine his care. Tragically, before the meeting could occur, Lorne succumbed to a catastrophic brain bleed. At the age of 65, he had entered prison at just 27. His death, shrouded in mystery, went without an autopsy. The cause of the brain bleed was never elucidated. After his passing, Robert DeClark, the former owner of the funeral home, sought and obtained custody of Lorne's remains, overseeing his cremation. Lorne's ashes were kept in storage, with DeClark periodically bringing them to the Department of Correction, hoping to locate any relatives. Yet no one ever came forward. It is a grim reality that Lorne received exactly what he deserved: a solitary, forgotten demise. No child, not even Cheryl, deserved such a fate. The violence and cruelty of the events are almost unimaginable. The lingering heartbreak endured by the remaining family, especially Frederick Boudoir, the father, must have been unbearable. Imagine the gut-wrenching realization that Frederick Boudoir faced when he learned that it was his own foster brother, Lorne Quinn, who had claimed the lives of his beloved family. The weight of such betrayal must have been indescribable, a suffocating truth that shattered his world. This revelation leads us to the pivotal question that echoes through the investigation. Was the sentence delivered to Lorne Quinn just? Or did he somehow slip through the cracks, receiving a punishment that failed to match the horror of his crime? This lingering uncertainty compels us to reflect on the justice system's response. If you find our exploration of these harrowing cases engaging and you wish to see more stories illuminated, we invite you to hit that like button and subscribe for deeper dives into the world of true crime. Thank you for joining us once again.